Welcome to Kev's Travel Stories. Each week I'll be bringing you a story from the weird and wonderful world of travel, a world that can change the way you see life and love and even the way we find meaning. Places that are iconic and sometimes surprising and even terrifying. So sit back and enjoy while we go on a magical mystery tour together. Welcome. I am joined by the extraordinary Pól Ó Conghaile, the award-winning, not just in Ireland, but across the globe, writer and traveller extraordinaire. Well, that's what I think. And he's really helped to educate the population through his fabulously attended column and online presence in the Irish Independent. He's so welcome here to talk about a place very near to his heart. So would you like to introduce us to Connemara, Pól?
Thank you, Kevin. That's one of the best intros I think I've ever got. I'm going red here. I spent a week or just under a week in Connemara this summer and fell, I suppose, head over heels back in love for it. And the reason why I think that's worth talking about is it poured rain for practically the whole time. I felt like I was going uphill to get the enjoyment out of it over the first day or two. But as often happens with Connemara, it's one of those landscapes and places that has a way of getting its hooks into you, slowing you down, winning you over with the small details, from the time people have with the chats to the Montbretia and the fuchsia on the sides of the road and the compass jellyfish rushed up on the beaches. And by the time you're ready to turn around and go back to the real world, you're suddenly a convert again and you're wondering where all the time went. And I just fell for it afresh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's almost like falling in love with an old girlfriend, an old lover.
We have a family history with it, and I think I'm far from alone in Ireland in this respect. So I did grow up in East Galway, and we would have been back and forth to the beach there, whether we'd be going through the city and going out towards Spiddal, or whether you would have been going up to Clifton. We would have had a good knowledge of it, but I since learned that my grandparents' honeymoon there, my parents have an attachment with it, and I get back, I suppose, for work at least once a year. So every time I pass Oughterard and get onto the N59, go over the river there's a kink in the road that just goes over the river outside Oughterard, and then you get into that landscape and the mountains start to rise up and the lakes start to reflect around you. It feels like one of those places where you're breaking the connection with the 9 to 5 as you transition into it.
Yes.
I think a lot of people identify with that.
My last experience of Connemara was actually during lockdown, and I don't know if you've heard of Rail Tours Ireland. They do this sort of private train around, and I was lucky enough to get on that. And we'd been for 2 days, we'd been in Killarney and we'd done Dingle, which was alive. When the sun shines in Dingle and you go around the ring of Kerry, you almost are giddy. I've never taken cocaine, but I'm sure it's quite similar to taking a hallucinogenic drug. It was just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I was sort of rather disappointed when we went into Connemara, and it took an hour. And then suddenly the sparseness and that sort of grey, but it wasn't grey. There was something really monumental about the vastness of the landscape and the granite, and there was something that really stayed with me and sort of slightly haunting.
I love the words you're using there, and I think that resonates with people. So it's not a county, it's not an administrative area, it's its own thing. No one seems quite to know where it begins or ends. There's the shoreline is the most indented, squiggly thing you could conceive of on a map. It has its islands, and it has this combination of a sad history of hardship and struggle and emigration. The mountains are denuded of whatever wildlife they once had there, and there's lots of reasons for that. But at the same time, then you have these widescreen views and this sort of cinematic sense of beauty to it. The 12 Bends, or if you're looking at the Killary Fjord, or you're taking a boat out to the Aran Islands, or whatever it may be. So you have those combinations of things. It's quite sparsely populated, so the towns still feel really small. Even Clifton, which is pretty much its hub, if you go there in the off-season, it just really feels like a country town. And somewhere like Roundstone is basically a couple of houses clutched together in the off-season. Yeah. When that is wet and yuck, that's what I mean by that initial sense. You can be going, oh my gosh, this is remote. But when the sun comes across it, it is like the Caribbean.
Yes.
It just
Yes.
lifts it.
Yes, and there's something about the colour of the sand and some of the water there.
Yeah.
I can remember stopping at this place, and it was quite dull. And we'd just passed where I think Marconi was doing his signal and the first plane landed.
That's Derry Gimla.
But there was something about the quality of the sand. It has this sort of colour, which was...
You are talking about, say, the southern western part of Connemara there, like the Ballyconneely Peninsula, Mannan Bay.
Yeah.
And you're right, the water, the clarity of it on a good day, you can bring your snorkel and it's great. The problem is getting the good light for it. You can't go to the bank on it. But the sand, it can be really white. But also, if you pick it up in Mannan Bay or also Troan Doleen in the Gaeltacht area, you will see that it almost looks like coral.
Yeah.
And it's called
Yes.
Maerl, Maerl, if I'm remembering that correctly. And it's actually the remains of a specific type of seaweed
That's
offshore.
right.
But it's
Yes.
absolutely, it's like a little universe in your hand, isn't it?
Yes.
All those shapes
Yes.
and colours.
Yes.
And that's another example of the detail that starts to suck you in. On the same beach, you might walk along and then see that compass jellyfish with its lovely lines going around the circle in the centre. And then you might see a Connemara pony and you'll read all about it. And then you might, like Tim Robinson, I don't know if you know his books on Connemara, but they're just beautiful and they're completely obsessive about detail. He was a map maker and he will go into endless detail about the bogs. Now, normally people might say, a bog, holidays, travel, what? But when you're talking about a bog in Connemara, there's a whole other romance to it.
Yes. Share a little bit about what you would look out for if you were someone who's listening to this podcast and you were not necessarily thinking of going to Connemara. What would be the things that you do check out?
Okay. If you're talking about, let's say, an iconic Connemara site or thing to do, Colmore Abbey will always be up there. It's pretty much the hub attraction. It's like the Cliffs of Moher or the Guinness Storehouse in Connemara, and they've really invested in it. And it has an upgraded exhibition in the old house, lots of storytelling, a new monastery just opened for the Benedictine nuns, and they've really jazzed up their wall gardens. It's a great day trip, but you are going to be on the tourist hamster wheel there. So just bear that in mind. Across the way from it is Connemara National Park. So it's a good thing you can do in 1 day or 2 days, do the two together. What's great about that is there's a mountain called Diamond Hill, which is more of a hill. But there's 2 or 3 looped walks that are very well marked and good for different ability levels. You can make it up to the summit on a day that isn't too wet or windy, and you have the views that are the rival of any views on planet Earth.
Yes. I'm lucky enough to have done Diamond, and it is with the grandkids, and it is... And you just make sure you have a sandwich, because when you get to the top, you need a little sustenance, because it's a good 90 minutes. I'd say you'd need to be... I don't think you could be sedentary and do Diamond Hill.
No, the top part of it, the lower loop, okay. It's gentle and you can potter. You know, at parts, you're really almost scrambling and it's very steep. And it'll give your thighs and calves a workout. I turned back this summer because of the rain and the wind. I couldn't see the summit. I saw a beautiful rainbow and I was happy with that. Nearby, there's a little food truck which has kind of gotten Instagram fame over the years called the Misunderstood Heron. And it's it's a lovely place to stop into. They do these Connemara pasties, they do mussels plucked from the fjord. Right below it. You have to get there at a time that avoids the peak lunchtime or summer rush. So that's all in that, let's say, the more northerly part. Then Clifton, definitely eat in Clifton and visit Clifton and have a mosey around it and go to the shops. And then I would go spend another day around the Ballyconneely Peninsula. Depending on your budget, you could stay at Ballinage Castle, which is a really characterful old manor-style hotel on the fishing river there. The Connemara Sands Hotel is an original Irish hotel collection hotel on the other side. Dogs Bay is the beach near Roundstone that's very iconic.
It's fantastic.
Set on a tombolo, which is kind of like, how would you describe it, Kevin? It's like a spit that comes out and branches into...
It's almost like an optical illusion. There's something about it. It's fabulous.
It is, and you get to it down this tightest of boreens. So you have to have your courage if you're going in peak season. You can get up to beautiful views on it if you walk up Erisbeg, which is the mountain looking down on it. You can walk up from Roundstone, but be cautious, there isn't a waymarked trail. You'll have to know your own ability, bring your food and go with someone or just go a little bit up before you turn around. You gain the view and you can come back. And look, that's only the start of it. The Gaeltacht area we talked about is Spiddle and Cararua, and then the walks, which are for hardier walkers or more seasoned walkers in the 12 bends and that. But that I would always caution that you do your research on those.
Yes.
And, you know, don't go out just with a plastic bottle of water on your runners.
No.
Yeah. Like the heat can come in other countries. It feels like you're never more than an hour away from that mist or rain in
Yes.
Connemara and the squelch
Yes.
underfoot. So you just have to be alert to that.
When would you suggest people visit? The ideal time to visit?
So I would give yourself the best shot of good weather. You're always going to pack the raincoat, but go when you still have a stretch in the day. So I would go before the clocks change if you can, because when it's dark at 4 in Connemara in winter, you can be up against it.
Yeah.
But I would, price-wise and crowds-wise, try and avoid July and August. Maybe the last week in August is okay because people start filtering back towards schools and all of that. And again, May and June can be absolutely lovely.
Anywhere you would say, again, if you were going to treat yourself to stay in one or two really nice places in Connemara, where would you give a shout out to?
So it's short on hotels, surprisingly, but there are a few good ones. I think probably Ashford Castle is outside of the boundaries of what we're talking about here. It's on Lough Corrib and very easy to get to and from Connemara from there. That's one of the most expensive hotels in the country. Balnahinch Castle, it's not a 5-star, but it has a very much a 5-star vibe. If you're like fishing, it has its own beats on the river there on Ballyconneely. You can eat in the Fisherman's Pub, which is a gorgeous old school pub. It's also open to non-residents, which is kind of a hack. If you don't want to spend on the overnight
brilliant.
rates, you can go for a pint or you can book an afternoon tea or eat dinner there. It also has a new chef, Danny Barry, in the Owenmore restaurant, and she's doing wonderful menus there. Georgina Campbell just named her Chef of the Year. And they've actually just put new saunas into the woodland, I suppose, leaning into this new trend for forest bathing and immersive experiences. So that is a great package. Yes. Also lovely art in the corridors, Jack Yates, Sean Scully, William Scott, if that floats your boat. So that's an iconic hotel, probably in my mind one of the 10 best on the island. That's definitely worth a look. And the other one I mentioned then was the Connemara Sands. It's not a hotel that would catch your eye too, but I stayed over a couple of nights and its service, its personality, it's right on Mannon Bay, has a barrel sauna by the beach and has a wonderful restaurant serving really local food with sensitivity and restraint. If Graham Roberts smoked salmon is on the plate, it's not going to destroy it with oodles of dressing and way too much this, that and the other. It lets it speak. Same with its lobster bisques, its local oysters and seafood and so on. Didn't have any expectations, but we came away going, wow, that was really one of our nicest meals of the trip. We like to eat when we go on holidays. We ate at several different, really well-known places in Connemara that disappointed us for the price this time, but that wasn't one of them.
That wasn't one of them. Would you recommend someone take a car, hire a car to go down around?
I hesitate because it's not the most environmentally friendly, but you could cycle, but you need fitness. Yeah. There's a lot of traffic and the weather can be against you. The public transport, as you know, isn't the greatest in Connemara. No. I think I'm going to have to say yeah to that.
Yes.
That's the way I did it anyway. And then I would go to the national park, park up, do my 2 or 3 hours walking and strolling. And then I would go to Kylemore and do whatever there and then relocate.
Yes. To finish off this wonderful trip of Connemara, one dish and one drink.
Oh, gosh. So a pure taste of Connemara. So I mentioned the oysters, I mentioned the seafood. So let's try and do something different. Lamb, how about lamb?
Yes.
So lamb is very complex story in Connemara. They're the reason why the mountains are bare in some respects. The farming has its problems. There's people who do sheepdog demonstrations, which is creating a new kind of a community and sustainable tourism there. And the lamb, in the right chef's hands, cooked the right way and served up in front of you, I swear I almost felt like I could taste the salt of the sea air and the herbs of the landscape. I'm romanticizing it a little bit. But it's one of those places, it's like Roscommon, where the lamb is really just makes you pause and go, oh, now there's something different here. I have to revise how I cook lamb at home. There's something happening here. So whether you want your chops or whether you want your roast lamb or your loin or however, I would go for that. There is a distillery in Galway called Mickle, M-I-C-I-L, that does whiskey and does poaching. And poaching would be, culturally speaking, a great little rabbit hole to go down in Connemara.
Absolutely. I can just imagine after the lamb. Ooh, I think that's the place to end. If you don't go to Connemara after hearing that, shame on you. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.